Hello, viewers. I highly advise you to watch the videos in the playlist um, in order for you to gain understanding on today's topic, which is referential integrity. So jumping right into the topic, referential integrity is a way to maintain cordial relationship between tables. In this regard, we databases introduced a concept called foreign key. A foreign key is a column or group of columns in a table that links to a column or group of columns in another table. The foreign key places constraints on data in the related tables, which allows databases to maintain referential integrity. Let's take a quick example here. Take a look at the example here. We have two tables that we so far created, which is gender and customers. So let's take a quick glance at them. So gender table has 3 records, which is male, female, and others. And they're represented by their ID 1, 2, 3. And the customer table has 13 records, which has a primary key customer ID and the first name, last name, and the gender ID, which is referencing to the gender ID in the gender table. So in this case, the gender is the parent table and the customer is child table, which is referencing to the gender table, right? So that because the gender ID in customer table is referencing to the gender ID to the gender table. However, because there's no referential integrity, you can enter any kind of IDs in here, which are not representing the IDs in the gender table, which is a big issue. That's the reason we are learning how to create a foreign key, right? So let's talk about the relationship between customers and genders in corporate terms. So the relationship between the gender and the customers is more like one to many, which means one customer can have many gender representations. For example, many customers can be represented as males. Many customers can be represented as females, and many customers can be represented as others if they don't choose to provide their gender identity. Right. So once again, the relationship between gender and customer table is called one to many. Right. And this relationship is established by the foreign key in the customers table specified by gender ID column. And the gender ID column in the customers table links to the gender ID column, which is a primary key column in the gender ID table, gender table, right? So the gender table is called the parent table or the reference table. And the customers table is known as the child table or referencing table. Typically, the foreign key columns of the child table often refer to the primary key columns of the parent table. A table can have more than one foreign key, where each foreign key references to a primary key of a different parent table. Once a foreign key constraint is in place, the foreign key columns from the child table must have the corresponding row in the parent key column of the parent table, or it can be null as well. But in this example, gender ID in customers table is a not null column, so you cannot enter nulls. But if there is null allowed, you can have nulls as well. Or there should be a value in gender ID column, which must reference to the gender ID in the gender table, right? So let's take a quick example of how to create a foreign key, right? I'll quickly show you two ways of doing this, right? The first way is when you are creating the table itself, that's what a data architect role comes into picture. He will be clearly defining how the tables are referenced to each other, right? So in the previous videos, we learned how to create a primary key. In this video, in order to add a foreign key, this is the syntax. constraint, the constraint name, which here customer, I picked the constraint name as customer gender underscore FK. FK means foreign key, and then followed by foreign key keyword, and then open braces, and you can add gender underscore ID, the column that we are referencing to as foreign key, and with which table it is references, right? So it is referencing to gender and gender ID, right? So gender is the table name and gender ID is the column within the table gender. So that's what you are referencing this gender ID to, right? So you need to follow the syntax in order to create a foreign key while creating the table itself, right? But oftentimes, let's say you had to add the foreign key after in the middle of a project, right? You cannot drop the table, which means again, you need to drop all the data. You need to create a temporary table to temporarily store the data and create a table. It's a hassle, right? So that for that reason, we're going to introduce a way where you can actually create a foreign key on a table without having to drop the table and recreate the table, right? So for that reason, I'm going to introduce something called as alter table syntax. So you can alter a table, the table name, which you're altering, and your add is another keyword. And then I'm just going to copy paste this syntax right here, the foreign key syntax right here to here, right? So easy peasy. So this is what you need to keep in mind. Alter table, table name, which is customers, and then add, and then followed by the syntax I just explained before. So once you execute it, it's going to create a foreign key on the table customers, referencing to the table gender.